Hello, today I will talk about ventilation. I may ruffle a few feathers, but let's get into it. I'll give you my thoughts. When I started racing pigeons 50 years ago, the old timers used to say, oh, you need to ventilate the lofts, but you can't have any drafts. No drafts, the birds will get sick. Well, as we all know, pigeons don't get sick with a draft. They're not going to get one-eye colds because of a draft or respiratory because of a draft. Just as well as you're not going to get a cold by going outside without a coat on. It is nearly impossible to have a big group of pigeons in a loft that's well ventilated without drafts. Now, my recommendation would be keep the weather out. You don't want rain. I mean, you don't need the wind blowing through, but to have a loft open and airy is better than closed down and stagnant or have the gases from the droppings build up. Open the loft up. Now again, I'm a nature guy, and I live in New England, it's very cold here in the winter. The pigeons live under bridges. It might be 0 degrees. They're wide open. They have got a roof over their head, which may be a highway, and they look tremendous. The health is great. They're bouncing around. Same with our pigeons. I keep the majority of my birds in the off season in open flight pens. There's a roof, there's 2 sides and a back wall, and they're on pole perches. Graded, expanded metal floors, and there's wind blowing through that thing, there's air moving, there's snow coming in. Again, because of the graded metal floors, everything drops through, I don't have to worry. Now, the birds are in super health and condition. When I moved to Oregon, the fanciers are out there were saying to me, oh, you're not gonna keep the pigeons like that, it's too cold. And it was not cold. Oregon was mild compared to New England in the winter. So let's get back to ventilation. Ideally, there's 2 types of ventilation. There's ventilation for the race team, and there's ventilation for the rest of the year. Now, on your race team, you want to try to keep a more stable temperature. So by having a wide open loft with the wind blowing through, there's a lot of variation in temperature which affects form. Now, I am going to get into another video about form and how to improve it and how to control it. But this video, we're mainly talking ventilation. Now, for the race team, I would recommend that you have a chimney type effect. Small openings, low, and the air goes out through the roof. And if the old timers in Belgium used to go in the loft with a cigar and see where the cigar smoke travels. You want it to go up and out. Now, with that type of ventilation, you can't crowd the pigeons. You can't pack them in. Now, if you only have a pair of pigeons like in my dining room here, you wouldn't need any ventilation. But if you put 100 pigeons in my dining room, you better open the windows, because the birds are going to get sick, the air is going to be stagnant. So you have to keep that in mind. Racing loft is one thing, everything else is another. My breeding lofts, big open doorways out into flight pens. It's pretty uncomfortable in the winter. The birds have a roof over their head. I'm sure when the wind's blowing through the lofts. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. This old don't have any drafts, worry about drafts. This is like something that the old timers were saying when I was a kid 50 years ago, and many of them have passed it on. They're still saying it today. Better to have air than not air. Don't worry about the birds getting sick. Put a roof over their head, keep the weather out. Racing lofts, a bigger difference. Racing lofts, more of a controlled environment. Again, if you're crowded in the racing lofts, open them up. You need the air. If you have a low number of pigeons and you can keep a loft with a chimney type effect, let the air come in low, go out high. Best case scenario. My racing lofts are pretty good size, and the air leaves from above. I have openings. I had thermostatically controlled venting on the roof that used to go on at a certain temperature. They don't work anymore. Now they're more or less just like a chimney effect. But my breed is totally different. My flight pens, wide open, roof, back wall, side wall, graded floor. It's relatively uncomfortable. The birds are in super health. So again, don't get caught up. Don't get too worried about ventilation. More air is better than less air. For everything else, But the race team, a little more controlled environment. You don't really want the wind blowing through the loft on the race team. Now maybe if you lived in Florida or Texas in the summer, that's another story. Here in New England, we deal with either cold, all kinds of wet and cold dampness in the spring, then high heat and humidity in the summer. But again, I'd rather have the lofts open than shut. Think about the wild pigeons living under the bridge. They do just great. They're in super health, they're in super condition, probably healthier than the birds in your own loft. Again, this is Frank McLaughlin from McLaughlin Lofts. If you like my video, subscribe, and put something in the comments if you want me to do a video on a question you may have. Thank you.